Hello and welcome to 3Ps in a Pod, the podcast about parenting, pediatrics, and perimenopause. I am Christy Herselman, founder of The Chat and host of this podcast. And today I am missing my partner, Dr. Claudia Gray, who is my co-host of this podcast, because we have not been able to get together to record this as we usually do. So I am flying solo for this episode. If you've been listening along to our podcast, you will know that we have been doing a series on parenting teens. And this is the fourth episode in that series. So if you haven't listened to the other ones, I really encourage you to go back and have a listen. Lots of really good parenting tips in those episodes. And we're going to finish off our series with an episode today that is going to focus on social media health with teenagers. Now, it is holidays up here in KZN where I live. If you have been following our podcast or the chat, you will know that I am a parent of 3 teenagers. I have twin boys who are 16 and I have a daughter who is 18. My daughter is home for the holidays from studying in Cape Town, and my 2 boys are on holiday as well. It is our beautiful winter break up here in KZN. We have the most glorious weather. We have the most glorious waves. It is just a really great time to be on holiday. And then added to that, we have so much wonderful sport on TV at the moment. We have the Soccer World Cup. We've just finished Wimbledon. We have the Tour de France. There is just so much to do on holiday. And some of those things involve screens and some of them don't. And when we are parenting teenagers, I think it's really important that we give thought during the holidays and at all times to their digital health and to their screen time. And for me as a parent, I do find it quite tricky in the holidays with screens because we have really clear boundaries around screens during the term time. Our children's devices go off at a certain time, come on at a certain time. We are very busy. We have very sporty children, so they are very busy with things. We don't have a lot of time to just be at home. And there's obviously studying to be done with the boys being in grade 11. And so during the week, it seems to be a little bit easier. And at the weekends, we also have lots on the go. But in the holidays, with increased downtime, often comes increased screen time. And so I do find it a little bit of a battle during the holidays is just to maintain those healthy screen boundaries, not just for my children, but for everyone. So today, I'm going to just tackle some of those questions around screen time, and then also just give some very practical advice on how we can parent teenagers in terms of screens. And so when we think of our teenagers' screen time, it's really good to break this word up into the two parts, the screen and the time. And so the time is important for a couple of different reasons. Obviously, our children only have 24 hours in a day. And there's so many good and wonderful things that our teenagers need to be and should be doing during that time. Obviously, in the holidays, that involves rest and friends and recreation and family time, those kinds of things. And then during the term, we obviously have academics, we have sport, any kind of exercise, family time, all of those things. And so the time they spend on these devices is really worth thinking about. We can look at the amount of time and it's different for different communities, different countries even. South Africa has one of the highest screen times in the world. And so we do have to look at whether our children are using screens for school, whether they're allowed to take their phones to school, all of those things. But when you're thinking about the amount of time your child is spending on a device, I found it was really easy to limit when they were younger because a screen was either a TV or an iPad, and it was something that you took out to use and then you switched off or you put away when you were done with it. But when our children become teenagers, a lot of them now have phones. They have phones, some of them have gaming consoles, then there's the TV, and all of those things. So I find it really is hard to manage the amount of time my children are spending on their phones specifically, but it is for me a fight worth fighting. And so 3 of the main reasons I think we need to think about the amount of time our children are spending online. Firstly is something called opportunity cost, and that is the amount of time our children are spending on screens are taken from somewhere else. And we are seeing this deficit play out in the lives of teenagers, where our teenagers' screen time is actually taking away from very important things. It's coming from face-to-face relationships. And so we see this increase in social anxiety, an increase in loneliness, and a decrease in the ability to make friends, to date, to find a partner, to interact with people face to face, because those social skills are lacking, because those social skills are not being practiced. So we're seeing a deficit in social skills. We're seeing an impact on academics. I've said it before, but the Gen Zs are the first generation in history to be less smart than their parents. We see this massive impact on academic achievements because of screens. We also see a decrease in family time. A survey by Common Sense Media recently showed that the average teenager was spending about 6 to 9 hours a day online and about 45 minutes a day with their family. And so the screens are becoming this monster that's gobbling up family time, gobbling up social time, gobbling up academic time. And because the literal goal of every single app is to addict us, it is really hard for our children to fight that battle. And so this opportunity cost and this taking away from really important skills development. And one that I didn't mention that I'd like to just mention quickly is the impact on their sleep. A lot of teenagers are staying up so late on their phones because their parents are not putting boundaries in place. They're being allowed to have their phones in their bedrooms after parents go to bed. They're charging their phones in their bedrooms. And so they are getting less sleep and they're getting poor quality sleep because of being on those screens just before they go to bed. And so we have this opportunity cost. The other reason why it's important for us to think about the amount of time our children are spending on screens is because everything that they allow in is going to shape them. And so then the question is, if they're spending all of this time on screens, who is shaping their values? Who is shaping their self-esteem, their worldview, how they treat other people, what is normal for them? A lot of very toxic content is being absorbed by teenagers and being normalized. Sometimes we see this in the area of sexuality and what is healthy in terms of sexuality. We're seeing it in terms of how to speak to people, how to treat people. These really unhealthy things being normalized. And so we got to think of that. So it's the opportunity cost. It's also the shaping of how they think, what they believe, and ultimately of their character. And then the third thing is the impact on their brains. The more time our children spend on screens, the more their brains are being shaped at a chemical and neurological level by these screens. We see the impact on the shortening of the attention span, the desire for these dopamine kicks, the real life becoming boring compared to these short bursts of dopamine they're finding online. And so the more time your teenager spends in that world, the more it's going to impact their brains on a neurological level. And that is when these addictions set in, these bad habits set in. We see children unplugging from the real world and plugging into social media because their brains are just being shaped in these very long-lasting ways. And so the time they spend is important. And then the second thing, obviously, is what is on that screen. Not all screen time is created equal, as I say, and some screen time is way better for us than others. And if we go back to my example of the sport that's on TV at the moment, sitting around watching the Tour de France together, watching the Wimbledon final. We are very into the Soccer World Cup, and as a family, we all choose our favorite teams that are going to advance, and it becomes quite a competitive thing in our home. We watch the games together, and then we talk about them afterwards. These kinds of screen times that connect us as people, where there's a big screen, lots of people around, even your friends, your children sitting in the same room, gaming with their friends, laughing together, spending that time together is way better than them gaming online with their friends in their bedrooms by themselves. Obviously, uses of screen time, like FaceTime, connecting with friends, those kinds of things are way better for them. And then we have, screen time that has a worse impact on them. One of the worst ways our children can spend their screen time, and interestingly, probably the highest ratio of time spent, is what we call short form video. It is our Instagram reels, our YouTube shorts, our reels on Snapchat. It's called Spotlights on Snapchat. And then, of course, the whole of TikTok. These short form videos are really bad for our brains. And often the content is incredibly mind numbing. Sometimes it's really unhealthy. Of course, our children can learn from these spaces. There's good content on there as well. But often these short videos are not things that really enrich the lives of our children. We've also obviously got to think of the quality of the videos they're watching. What is the worldview being presented? How is it making our children feel? We know that girls who spend more than 3 or 4 hours a day on Instagram or TikTok are much more likely to be depressed or to be anxious because of how social media makes them feel. And so we've got to think of what are they consuming on the screen? And then we've also got to think of what are they producing? What are they putting out there? What comments are they making? What kinds of pictures are they posting? What are they sharing? What does their digital footprint look like? All of these things we've got to think about when we are considering the digital health of our teenagers. And so it is very much this big picture of the time they're spending, where their time's coming from, and then what is on that screen. How is that impacting them? How is it shaping what they think, what they feel? How is it impacting their reputation? How is it impacting their future? All of those good things. And so when we think about the digital health of our teenagers, I just want to share 5 tips that I find really, really helpful. The first one is that before we place a device in our children's hands, in our teenagers' hands, we make that device as safe as possible. And there are so many ways we can do that, and they're improving all the time. I always say to parents, if you want to know how to do this, hop onto ChatGPT and ask there, how can I make this device safest for my teen? You'll come up with lots of great options. You can go onto screen time. You can restrict adult content. You can go onto each app with your teen and follow the safety measures and the guidelines for teens on those specific apps. WhatsApp is such a great example because it is one that parents don't give a lot of thought to, but it is one that you can make much safer for your teen. So things like making sure your teenager is not able to randomly be added to groups. If someone wants to add a child to your child to a group, your child doesn't get automatically added, and invitation gets sent to them. That's simply a setting that you can put in place in their settings. You can also switch off their blue ticks, which takes away the pressure to answer straight away. The pressure that people say, well, she's seen my message and she hasn't replied. Why hasn't she? It takes away some of that anxiety. Talking through etiquette of WhatsApp groups. What is okay to say on the group? What's not okay? When do you need to call in an adult? How to report people, how to block people, all of those things. So making that device safe is really important. You can also, as I said, go onto your social media apps. One of the things that we do with our devices is we use downtime a lot. During the week, my boys who are 16, their devices switch off at 8:30 p.m. and they switch back on in the afternoon after school at 2:30 p.m. And then during that time, they can't access any social media. We have chosen to allow them access always to WhatsApp and to phone calls. So those they can use anytime. So if they need to get hold of us when they're at school, if they need to check a sports group in the morning, they can do that. But there is no temptation for them to go onto Instagram before school or to play a round of Block Blast or whatever they want to play, whatever games they play before school. That's taken away. Some parents say, well, shouldn't your children be responsible for that? Yes, we're working on that. But I know so many adults who can't get off social media at night, who are going to sleep way too late, one more round, one more episode. And so we just make that device safer for our children in that way. And then the second thing is just to be present. Sometimes parents of teenagers feel like their children are living in this digital world that they know nothing about. And Tatiana Jordan, who was the CEO of one of our most well-known monitoring and filtering software, Bark, was quoted as saying, if you don't know what's going on in your child's social media life, you don't know what's going on in your child's life. We hear these stories of children who get caught up in these dark places on the internet, on these toxic communities, absorbing content like pornography or anorexic content for years without parents knowing. Parents, your child's social media is not a private space. It is a public space. And so you checking your child's device, knowing what they're watching, looking at their messages from time to time, seeing who they're following on Instagram, who they're friends with on Snapchat, that is good parenting. That is not an invasion of your child's privacy. And I'm not saying do this behind your child's back. I'm saying have an open phone policy in your home where you know the passwords, where you hop on. We have an open phone policy in our home. And what that means is our children can even look at our devices. Not that they want to, they've got better things to do with their lives, but they can. We have nothing to hide on our devices. And our hope is that our children have nothing to hide on theirs. Now, of course, children can hide things. There's apps to hide things. And so this is not a way that you're going to keep your child completely safe. But what it does bring is it brings openness, it brings accountability, and it brings a level of integrity. I like to describe the teenage brain as a Ferrari with a brilliant accelerator and terrible brakes, because the prefrontal cortex, the brakes of the brain, have not kicked in fully yet. They'll be fully developed at the age of about 25 or 26. And so until then, until our children are older, we as parents need to help play the role. And so when you are going to be hopping onto your child's social media from time to time, you become a speed bump for that Ferrari. And you become a safeguard for them. You become, Claudia often talks about handrails, that are in place. And so these are important things for our children. And then the third thing is boundaries. Boundaries are one of our best friends as parents and something that our children really, really need in the digital space. I always talk about 4 main kinds of boundaries with digital health: time, place, content, behavior. Set time boundaries. I've already spoken about downtime that we have in our home. We also have limits. We'll say to our children, okay, you can be on your phone for an hour and then you go and plug it in. We don't allow phones, as I said, before school, before studying is done, those kinds of things. So putting those time things in place, we don't allow more than 2 hours of screen time a day during term time, and no more than 3 hours during the holidays. And so put boundaries in place that work for your family in terms of time. And then also place is really important. We have 4 screen-free spaces that I recommend: the bedroom, the dinner table, the car, and social gatherings. Now, our teenagers are allowed their phones in their bedrooms. We have made that decision as they've got older, but those devices are never charged in their bedrooms. So an hour before bedtime, those devices get plugged in the kitchen, they go into downtime, and they don't have them in their bedrooms. The bedroom is a place for rest, it's a place for sleep, and for younger teenagers, I really do recommend you keep those devices out of bedrooms completely, but definitely at night. And then the dinner table, please don't allow your children to use their phones at the dinner table, whether it's at home, at restaurants. Of course, this applies to us as well. And then in the car, it's very tempting for children to just scroll through their phones in the car. This is something we've had to really fight as our children have got older, but we insist on no phones used in the car, unless it's to send a quick message. But there's no social media, because the car is a great place for connection. And then when your children are out, make sure that they are not spending time on their phones when they should be connecting with people. And that again, in social settings, phones are used just for communication purposes, that we don't sit and scroll through stuff, and that our children are connecting with the people around them. And then in terms of content, this is where our presence in their social media space is important, that we talk to them about what is good content, what is the content that makes them feel good about themselves, that makes them into better people. I always say to teenagers, if your granny was sitting on the couch next to you, would she approve of what you're watching? Would you feel proud? If other people knew this was what you're watching, would you feel proud of it? If it was put up on a screen, what would people think of it? That we're doing things that align with our character, that we are good digital citizens, that we are kind, that we are inclusive, that we are watching things that make the digital space and our lives better, that they're choosing well in terms of their content. And then also in terms of their behavior, that they are putting content out that is presenting the world with an authentic version of themselves, that is building their reputation, that one day when they go for a scholarship interview or a prefect interview or a job interview, that what is found about them online is positive and shows the real person that they are and the person that they want to be, that shows their best selves. And then the second to last point, my fourth point, is just good conversations. There are some really real and important conversations we need to be having with our children ongoingly. And as teenagers, conversations not just about information, but about connection and communication. We really do need to be having conversations with our teenagers about healthy sexuality, about what's happening in terms of puberty, about dating, about attraction, about relationships. We need to be talking about sex and pornography. We need to be talking about how to treat people, how to have good, robust conversations with people we don't agree with. We need to be talking about what's happening in the world, about xenophobia and wars and all of the things that are happening around, that we help them come to a place of critical thinking, of skepticism, of not absorbing content without thinking about it, talking about AI and the role of AI and all of these things and these are some of the great conversations we can have around the dinner table with our children, that we don't just talk to our children about the things they shouldn't be doing online and about the dangers, that we talk about the positive stuff, the good stuff, the awesome ways that we can use it. And then the last and final points just around healthy digital use by our teenagers is the power of connection. If you spend any time with me, if you've been to any of my talks, you'll know that it pretty much always comes back to connection. It is called the Chats for a reason, the movement that I founded. And I have found both anecdotally with the people that I spend time with, the families that I help, and with the research that I do, that children who have a deep, robust, and healthy connection with their family, with the people in their community, through sport, through mentorship, through youth groups, and in the home, those are the ones who fare best online. The ones who get absorbed into negative spaces online, whose self-esteem is eroded, whose worldviews are skewed, who become anxious, who become lonely, who become withdrawn, are often the ones who lack healthy face-to-face, real-life connection. So build that in your home. Make sure that you are having at least one meal a day with your children, that you are finding moments of connection with your teen throughout the day, that even as teenagers become more independent, start becoming their own people, that we are still fighting for connection with them, for moments with them, both on their terms and on ours, that we take those opportunities to connect, and that we also create opportunities for them to connect with others. I remember this one boy, it was after a school holiday, and I said to him, "How was your holiday?" And he said, "Oh, it was so boring. My mom works in the holidays and she doesn't allow me to go out on my own. And so I was at home with my Xbox and my iPhone the whole holiday." And that broke my heart, and it really made me a little bit fearful for this child, because often as parents, we think that they're safer online than in the real world. But statistically, they are still safer, even in a country like South Africa. They're safer when we give them increased freedom to be in the real world. So create opportunities for them to be with other people, to play sports, to create relationships with coaches, with mentors, with peers, with those kinds of things, so that they can build those social skills, they can build that those street smarts, they can build those connections, so that those then also translate into skills that they need in the online world. So as parents of teens, our goal is self-regulation. The goal is self-leadership, that we build up these little people into big people who can have good screen time habits of their own, that form healthy relationships with people online, and can navigate the crazy world of social media by themselves. But they're not there yet. As teenagers, they are still children, and they very much need us as coaches and guides. And our role is still to bring discipline, to bring boundaries, to bring conversation, to bring coaching. And also, parents, one last encouragement that I know is so important as our children really go into these teen years is we have to lead by example. And so we have to look at our own screen use. We have to look at how are we using screens around our teens? What are we modeling for them? That we show them what it's like to be good digital citizens. And so while we're providing that coaching, that guiding, that mentorship, we are also showing them in real time what it looks like to use phones and to use devices in a positive way. So that is it for today, for my solo episode of 3 Peas in a Pod. Hopefully next time the two of us will be back, but look out for us. We drop a new episode every 2 weeks. Just a reminder that we are both professionals. We both really do research the content that we bring you, but it is for guidance, it is for help. And if you have any concerns about your children's digital health or their well-being in any way, please seek professional help, and we are there to support you. But there are wonderful professionals who can add that layer of support to your parenting journey. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you back here again very, very soon for another episode of 3 Peas in a Pod. Until then, goodbye.